I want to start today with something a little different and very interesting and important in understanding a lot of the structures that have gotten the politics of the United States to where they are today. We're going to look at a new poll from the New York Times, from New York Times with Siena College. And it's not about who's winning, Biden or Trump. It's really about one of the fundamental inequalities that we have in the United States. It's not income inequality, which we'll talk about later today with our guest. It is a poll that confirms something I've been talking about for many years, which is that on the issues, the United States electorate, meaning people, you, me, us, we are well to the left compared to, number one, what many people might assume is the left-right balance of the country. But maybe more importantly, the country is to the left of where our elected representatives are. Our elected representatives are far more conservative than the makeup of the United States. We have a country where if you go to individual people and you ask them about policy, very important, you ask about policy issues, policy questions, you come away with the impression that the country is quite left, certainly more left than many people are willing to admit. But then you look at governors and you look at state legislatures and you look at the makeup of the Senate and the makeup of corporate media, and it sort of seems like a center-right country. But as I've told you before, we have 3 to 4 different systems in this country that keep our representation well to the right of the actual electorate. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go through it in pieces. This is one of those types of stories which, it's not a clickbait story. It's not going to get 500,000 views on YouTube. But if you don't understand this, you miss a lot of why the country is the way it is. So it's really important to do. First and foremost, the New York Times poll asked likely voters about their positions on a variety of issues. And when you look at the numbers, there's nothing center right about this country. For example, 72% of the country wants a second $2 trillion coronavirus stimulus package. 72%. Only 21% oppose a second coronavirus stimulus. In a country this polarized and seemingly divided, 72% agreement on anything is stunning. 72% want the $2 trillion second stimulus. How about this? 67% of the country believes there should be a public health insurance option. Now, I know it's not single payer, it's not Medicare for all. But remember, when the debate started in 2010, 2009 about the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, President Obama started the negotiation at, I'd like a public option. The Republican Party went crazy, pretending it was some kind of socialist government takeover of healthcare. And yet, 67% of this country agrees we should have it. When you hear Trump talk about we're going to get rid of Obamacare at rallies and his crowd cheers and Fox News talks about it in less than glowing terms, you might get the impression that there's a lot of debate among the public, but 67% of the country agrees this is something we should have. Something this controversial with hundreds of millions of dollars spent in opposition. And 2/3 of the country flat out says we should have this option. There should be such a government option. Now it gets more interesting. Joe Biden's $2 trillion climate plan, which Donald Trump and Republicans pretend is crazy. They say it'll end the auto industry. They say it'll end fossil fuel industry. They say it's outrageous. It's socialist. 66% of the country supports Joe Biden's $2 trillion climate plan, which includes getting back into the Paris Climate Accords, some elements using the Green New Deal as a framework, phasing out fossil fuel vehicles, on and on and on. 2/3 of the country wants it. Even things that have become almost rallying cries of the right, like their opposition to a national mask mandate, which, by the way, would really be a president saying, hey, governors, please do mask mandates in your states. And it would ultimately be up to governors whether to do it or not. 59% of the country wants a national mask mandate. Here's another interesting one. Fracking. Donald Trump and Republicans have made a huge deal out of saying Joe Biden will ban fracking. It's not actually what Biden would do. Biden has a plan to phase it out over time. But as if continuing to frack is so important, Trump has been hammering Biden on that. Only 44% of the country wants fracking to exist. An almost equal amount, 42%, doesn't, and 14% isn't sure. A big portion of that, I believe, if they learn more about it, would be against fracking. So this is not a right-wing country. When you look at this, I mean, even if you just say, let's only look at policies with 60% approval or higher, 60% or higher support, that would mean we get a $2 trillion second coronavirus stimulus, public health insurance, and Biden's $2 trillion climate plan. That's just if we set the line at 60% and we say only do things where 60% of the country agrees. That's three major policies that would be a major leftward switch. So we then must ask the question, why does the Senate have 53 Republicans? Why do we have 26 Republican governors? Why is it so hard to remove a lunatic Republican president? And as I've said before, we have systems that favor the American right. Example number one. Electoral College. The Electoral College system has handed Republican wins to Republican candidates who lost the popular vote. Much like on the issues, the will of the people was to elect a Democrat. The Electoral College handed it to a Republican. That's a systemic help to the right. Example number two, gerrymandering, which is the strategic drawing of congressional districts, has allowed way more Republican members of the House than you would have with fairly drawn districts. The Democratic Party would have a bigger majority right now were it not for gerrymandering. There are previous Republican majorities which may have not been Republican majorities were it not for gerrymandering. Systemic help to the American right. Example number three, the Senate as an institution. When you give each state 2 senators, and the states vary widely in population, low population states get disproportionately more power. California has 60, 70 times the population of Wyoming. California has 2 senators. Wyoming has 2 senators. Wyoming is a red state. Wyoming senators have insanely more power relative to their populations than California, because conservatives prefer, on average, to live more rurally, whereas Democrats, left-wingers, progressives prefer to live more in urban or suburban settings. At a systemic level, that gives more power to fewer right-leaning people. So the key takeaways here are not to get tricked by really bad talking points for many on the right, including talking points like this is a center-right country. It's not. When you fairly poll people on issues, you see that this is a center-left to left country. And number two, we have systemic elements of how our system is organized that have our representation be far to the right of what the actual country believes on a number of different issues. Something to keep in mind as we go forward over the next 2 weeks towards this upcoming election.